discovery of any hierarchy. The coherence, which the system seeks to preserve, is the discovery that the process, or concrescence, of any one actual entity involves the other actual entities among its components. In this way the obvious solidarity of the world receives its explanation. In all philosophic theory there is an ultimate which is actual in virtue of its accidents. It is only that capable of characterization through its accidental embodiments, and apart from these accidents is devoid of actuality. In the philosophy of organism this ultimate is termed creativity, and God is its primordial, non-temporal accident. In monistic philosophies, absolutes or absolute idealism, this ultimate is God, who is also equivalently termed the Absolute. In such monistic schemes, the ultimate is illegitimately allowed a final, eminent, reality, beyond that ascribed to any of its accidents. In this general position the philosophy of organism seems to approximate more to some strains of Indian, or Chinese, thought, than to Western Asiatic, or European, thought. One side makes the ultimate, the other side makes fact ultimate. Section 3T. In its turn every philosophy will suffer a deposition. But a bundle of philosophic systems expresses a variety of general truths about the universe, awaiting coordination and assignment of their various spheres of validity. Such progress in coordination is provided by the advance of philosophy, since philosophy has advanced from Plato onwards. According to this account of the achievement of rationalism, the chief error in philosophy is overstatement. The aim of generalization is sound, but the estimate of success is exaggerated. There are two main forms of such overstatement. One form is what I have termed, elsewhere, the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. This fallacy consists in neglecting the degree of abstraction involved when an actual entity is considered merely. 2 cf. Science in the Modern World, ch. 8, the speculative scheme. So far as it exemplifies certain categories of thought. There are aspects of actualities which are simply ignored so long as we restrict thought to these categories. Thus the success of a philosophy is to be measured by its comparative avoidance of this fallacy, when thought is restricted within its categories. The other form of overstatement consists in a false estimate of logical procedure in respect to certainty, and in respect to premises. Philosophy has been haunted by the unfortunate notion that its method is dogmatically to indicate premises which are severally clear, distinct, and 12th cer tilde toin, and to erect upon those premises a deductive system of thought. But the accurate expression of the final generalities is the goal of this tilde cushion and not its origin. Philosophy has been misled by the example of mathematics, and even in mathematics the statement of the ultimate logical principles is beset with difficulties, as yet insuperable. The verified tilde cation of a rationalistic scheme is to be sought in its general success, and not in the peculiar certainty, or initial clarity, of its first principles. In this connection the misuse of the ex absurdo argument has to be noted. Much philosophical reasoning is vitiated by it. The only logical conclusion to be drawn, when a contradiction issues from a train of reasoning, is that at least one of the premises involved in the inference is false. It is rashly assumed without further question that the Pekin premise can at once be located. In mathematics, this assumption is often justified, and philosophers have been thereby misled. But in the absence of a well-defined categorical scheme of entities, issuing in a satisfactory metaphysical system, every premise of a philosophical argument is under suspicion. Philosophy will not regain its proper status until the gradual elaboration of categorical schemes, definitely stated at each stage of progress, is recognized as its proper objective. There may be rival schemes, inconsistent among themselves, each with its own merits and its own failures. It will then be the purpose of research to conciliate the differences. Metaphysical categories are not dogmatic statements of the obvious, they are tentative formulations of the ultimate generalities. If we consider any scheme of philosophic categories as one complex assertion, and apply to it the logician's alternative, true or false, the answer must be that the scheme is false. The same answer must be given to a like case 13t on respecting the existing formulated principles of any science. The scheme is true with unformulated qualifications, exceptions, limited tions, and new interpretations in terms of more general notions. We do not yet know how to recast the scheme into a logical truth. But the scheme is a matrix from which true propositions applicable to particular circumstances can be derived. We can at present only trust our trained instincts. 8 cf. Principia Mathematica, by Bertrand Russell and A. N. Whitehead, Volume I. Introduction and Introduction to the Second Edition. The introductory discussions are practically due to Russell, and in the second edition wholly so. Speculative philosophy. 9. As to the discrimination of the circumstances in respect to which the scheme is valid. The use of such a matrix is to argue from it boldly and with rigid logic. The scheme should therefore be stated with the utmost precision and definiteness, to allow of such argumentation. The conclusion of the argument should then be confronted with circumstances to which it should apply. The primary advantage thus gained is that experience is not interrogated with the benumbing repression of common sense. The observation acquires an enhanced penetration by reason of the expectation evoked by the conclusion of the argument. The outcome from this procedure takes one of three forms. I. The conclusion may agree with the observed facts. E. The conclusion may exhibit general agreement, with disagreement in detail. E. The conclusion may be in complete disagreement with the facts. In the first case, the facts are known with more adequacy and the applicability of the system to the world has been elucidated. In the second case, criticisms of the observation of the facts and of the details of the scheme are both required. The history of thought shows that false interpretations of observed facts enter into the records of their observation. Both theory and received notions as to fact are in doubt. In the third case, a fundamental reorganization of theory is required either by way of limiting it to some special province, or by way of entire abandonment of its main category. 14. After the initial basis of a rational life, with a civilized language, has been laid, all productive thought has proceeded either by the poetic insight of artists, or by the imaginative elaboration of schemes of thought capable of utilization as logical premises. In some measure or other, progress is always a transcendence of what is obvious. Rationalism never shakes off its status of an experimental adventure. The combined influence of ethics and mathematics and religion, which have so greatly contributed to the rise of philosophy, have also had the unfortunate effect of yoking it with static dogmatism. Rationalism is an adventure in the clarification of thought, progressive and never final. But it is an adventure in which even partial success has importance. Section IV. The field of a special science is confined to one genus of facts, in the sense that no statements are made respecting facts which lie outside that genus. The very circumstance that a science has naturally arisen concerning a set of facts secures that facts of that type have definite relations among themselves which are very obvious to all mankind. The common obviousness of things arises when their extension apprehension carries immediate importance for purposes of survival, or of enjoyment, that is to say, for purposes of being, and of well-being. Elements in human experience. 10. The speculative scheme. Singled out in this way, are those elements concerning which language is copious and, within its limits, precise. The special sciences, therefore, deal with topics which lie open to easy inspection and are readily expressed by words. The study of philosophy is a voyage towards the larger generalities. For this reason, in the infancy of science, when the main stress lay in the discovery of the most general ideas usefully applicable to the subject till the matter in question, philosophy was not sharply distinguished from science. To this day, a new science with any substantial novelty in its notions is considered to be in some way 15J peculiarly philosophical. In their later stages, apart from occasional disturbances, most sciences accept without question the general notions in terms of which they develop. The main stress is laid on the adjustment and the direct verification of more special statements. In such periods scientists repudiate philosophy. Newton, justly satisfied with his physical principles, disclaimed metaphysics. The fate of Newtonian physics warns us that there is a development in scientific first principles, and that their original forms can only be saved by interpretations of meaning and limitations of their field of application, interpretations and limitations unsuspected during the first period of successful employment. One chapter in the history of culture is concerned with the growth of generalities. In such a chapter it is seen that the older generalities, like the older hills, are worn down and diminished in height, surpassed by younger rivals. Thus one aim of philosophy is to challenge the half-tilde truths constituting the scientific first principles. The systematization of knowledge cannot be conducted in watertight compartments. All generalities condition each other, and the limits of their application cannot be adequately defined apart from their correlation by yet wider generalities. The criticism of principles must chiefly take the form of determining the proper meanings to be assigned to the fundamental notions of the various sciences, when these notions are considered in respect to their status relatively to each other. The determination of this status requires a generality transcending any special subject matter. If we may trust the Pythagorean tradition, the rise of European philosophy was largely promoted by the development of mathematics into a science of abstract generality. but in its subsequent development the method of philosophy has also been vitiated by the example of mathematics. The primary method of mathematics is deduction. The primary method of philosophy is descriptive type generalization. Under the influence of mathematics, deduction has been foisted onto philosophy as its standard method, instead of taking its true place as an essential auxiliary mode of verification whereby to test the scope of generalities. This apprehension of philosophic method has veiled the very considerable subtleties of philosophy in providing generic notions which add lucidity to our apprehension of the facts of experience. The depositions of Plato, Aristotle. Speculative philosophy. 11 Thomas Aquinas, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, Locke, Berkeley, Hume, Kant, Hegel, merely mean that ideas which these men introduced into the philosophic tradition must be construed as imitations, adaptations, and inversions, either unknown to them, or even explicitly repudiated by them. A new idea introduces a new alternative, and we are not less indebted to a thinker when we adopt the alternative which he discarded. Philosophy never reverts to its old position after the shock of a great philosopher. Section B. Every science must devise its own instruments. The tool required for philosophy is language. Thus philosophy redesigns language in the same way that, in a physical science, pre-existing appliances are redesigned. It is exactly at this point that the appeal to facts is a difficult operation. This appeal is not solely to the expression of the facts in current verbal statements. The adequacy of such sentences is the main question at issue. It is true that the general agreement of mankind as to experienced facts is best expressed in language. But the language of literature breaks down precisely at the task of expressing in explicit form the larger generalities, the very generalities which metaphysics seeks to express. The point is that every proposition refers to a universe exhibiting some general systematic metaphysical character. Apart from this background, the separate entities which go to form the proposition, and the proposition as a whole, are without determinate character. Nothing, 17, has been defined, because every definite entity requires a systematic universe to supply its requisite status. Thus every proposition proposing a fact must, in its complete analysis, propose the general character of the universe required for that fact. There are no self-sustained facts, floating in nonentity. This doctrine, of the impossibility of tearing a proposition from its systematic context in the actual world, is a direct consequence of the 4th and the 20th of the fundamental categorical explanations which we shall be engaged in expanding and illustrating. A proposition can embody partial truth because it only demands a certain type of systematic environment, which is presupposed in its meaning. It does not refer to the universe in all its detail. One practical aim of metaphysics is the accurate analysis of propositions, not merely of metaphysical propositions, but of quite ordinary propositions such as, there is beef for dinner today, and, Socrates is mortal. The one genus of facts which constitutes the field of some special science requires some common metaphysical presupposition respecting the universe. It is merely credulous to accept verbal phrases as adequate statements of propositions. The distinction between verbal phrases and complete propositions is one of the reasons why the logician's rigid alternative, true or false, is so largely irrelevant for the pursuit of knowledge. 12. The speculative scheme. The excessive trust in linguistic phrases has been the well-known reason vitiating so much of the philosophy and physics among the Greeks and among the mediaeval thinkers who continued the Greek traditions. For example, John Stuart Mill writes, the Greeks had great difficulty in distinguishing between things which their language confounded, or in putting mentally together things which it distinguished, and could hardly combine the objects in nature into any classes but those which were made for them by the popular phrases of their own country, or at least could not help fancying those classes to be natural, and all others arbitrary and artificial. AC 18J. Accordingly, scientific investigation among the Greek schools of speculation and their middleowners in the Middle Ages was little more than a mere sifting and analyzing of the notions attached to common language. They thought that by determining the meaning of words they could become acquainted with facts. 4 Mill then proceeds to quote from Whewell 5 a paragraph illustrating the same weakness of Greek thought. But neither Mill, nor Whewell, tracks this difficulty about language down to its sources. They both presuppose that language does enunciate well-defined propositions. This is quite untrue. Language is thoroughly indeterminate, by reason of the fact that every occurrence presupposes some systematic type of environment. For example, the word Socrates, referring to the philosopher, in one sentence may stand for an entity presupposing a more closely defined background than the word Socrates, with the same reference, in another sentence. The word mortal affords an analogous possibility. A precise language must await a completed metaphysical knowledge. The technical language of philosophy represents attempts of various schools of thought to obtain explicit expression of general ideas presupposed by the facts of experience. It follows that any novelty in metaphysical doctrines exhibits some measure of disagreement with statements of the facts to be found in current philosophical literature. The extent of disagreement measures the extent of metaphysical divergence. It is, therefore, no valid criticism on one metaphysical school to point out that its doctrines do not follow from the verbal expression of the facts accepted by another school. The whole contention is that the doctrines in question supply a closer approach to fully expressed propositions. The truth itself is nothing else than how the composite natures of the organic actualities of the world obtain a 19J Quake representation in the divine nature. Such representations compose the consequent nature of God, which evolves in its relationship to the evolving world without Darrow. 4. T-Logic, Book 5, ch. 3, 5 cf. Whewell's History of the Inductive Sciences. Speculative Philosophy. 13 Gation to the eternal completion of its primordial conceptual nature. In this way the ontological principle is maintained since there can be no determinate truth, correlating impartially the partial experiences of many actual entities from one actual entity to which it can be referred. The reaction of the temporal world on the nature of God is considered subsequently in Part 5. It is their term, the consequent nature of God. Whatever is found in practice must lie within the scope of the metaphysical description. When the description fails to include the practice, the metaphysics is inadequate and requires revision. There can be no appeal to practice to supplement metaphysics, so long as we remain contented with our metaphysical doctrines. Metaphysics is nothing but that description of the generalities which apply to all the details of practice. No metaphysical system can hope entirely to satisfy these pragmatic tests. At the best, such a system will remain only an approximation to the general truths which are sought. In particular, there are no precisely stated axiomatic certainties from which to start. There is not even the language in which to frame them. The only possible procedure is to start from verbal expressions which, when taken by themselves with the current meaning of their words, are ill-defined and ambiguous. These are not premises to be immediately reasoned from apart from elucidation by further discussion. They are endeavors to state general principles which will be exemplified in the subsequent description of the facts of experience. This subsequent elaboration should elucidate the meanings to be assigned to the words and phrases employed. Such meanings are incapable of accurate apprehension apart from a correspondingly accurate apprehension of the metaphysical background which the 20th universe provides for them. But no language can be anything but elliptical, requiring a leap of the imagination to understand its meaning in its relevance to immediate experience. The position of metaphysics in the development of culture cannot be understood without remembering that no verbal statement is the adequate expression of a proposition. An old established metaphysical system gains a false air of adequate precision from the fact that its words and phrases have passed into current literature. Thus propositions expressed in its language are more easily correlated to our footing intuitions into metaphysical truth. When we trust these verbal statements and argue as though they adequately analyzed meaning, we are led into difficulties which take the shape of negations of what in practice is presupposed. But when they are proposed as first principles, they assume an unmerited air of sober obviousness. Their defect is that the true propositions which they do express lose their fundamental character when subjected to adequate expression. For example, consider the type of propositions such as, the grass is green, and, the whale is big. This subject-predicate form of statement seems so simple, leading straight to a metaphysical first principle, and yet in these examples it conceals such complex, diverse meanings. 14. The speculative scheme. Section D. It has been an objection to speculative philosophy that it is over-ambitious. Rationalism, it is admitted, is the method by which advance is made within the limits of particular sciences. It is, however, held that this limited success must not encourage attempts to frame ambitious schemes expressive of the general nature of things. One alleged justification of this criticism is ill success. European thought is represented as littered with metaphysical systems, abandoned and until reconciled. Such an assertion tacitly fastens upon philosophy the old dogmatic test. The same criterion would fasten ill 21 success upon science. We no more retain the physics of the 17th century than we do the Cartesian philosophy of that century. Yet within limits, both systems express important truths. Also we are beginning to understand the wider categories which define their limits of correct application. Of course, in that century, dogmatic views held sway. so that the validity both of the physical notions, and of the Cartesian notions, was misconceived. Mankind never quite knows what it is after. When we survey the history of thought, and like tilde-wise the history of practice, we find that one idea after another is tried out, its limitations defined, and its core of truth